What's up, everybody? Welcome to Move the Sticks. DJ Buck back with you. Buck, how's it going, my friend?
Man, it's going great, DJ. Like, we're getting one step closer to preseason games, and I don't know how you're doing with the Chargers in terms of like trying to get lined up, but calling a preseason game is much different than calling like your own game because you got a lot of names to know. You have a bunch of different storylines, and you're actually trying to talk about the process and what people are going through and where we're at this time of year, how the evaluations go, and why so many bubble players are playing, but the starters are not, and how that factors into the overall evaluation. And so it's funny. And then anytime I get to this time of year, like I always reminisce about being like one of those bottom third guys and like the pressure that escalates as you get closer to games and as you get closer to those designated cut down days, and how all of a sudden you can play one way, but then the pressure makes you feel like you have to do more, and that can ultimately trip you up. And so I love watching those Hard Knock shows because I think it allows people to relate to players as they're going through something that is really, really challenging, maybe the most challenging thing that they do in their professional lives.
Yeah, I think that's one of the cool things about doing the preseason games that we're doing is that you get a chance to tell some of those stories about those guys. And it's, over the years of doing this, I've kind of learned that one of the more intriguing aspects of doing these broadcasts, these preseason broadcasts, is not necessarily even just, who all is going to make the team, but like how many receivers are they going to carry? How many offensive linemen, defensive linemen are they going to carry? Those, that roster composition. And I think this year, like one of the things I'm going to be, trying to learn in talking to special teams coaches is, how does this new kickoff rule affect the roster construction? Are you more likely to keep some, an extra safety? Is that going to give you want to keep more, speed? Is that an extra corner or receiver on the roster that you can get by? Can you get by with one less, linebacker? Like, how does that all work with some of the shift and change in the special teams rules that have changed? So a lot of different aspects in the preseason that kind of keep you interested and keep you plugged in, even if we might not necessarily see all the top guys.
Yeah, it really keeps you locked in. And then DJ, when you also talked about not only like what the team is doing and how the team is thinking, but also introduction to the new rules. So all the consternation that people have had over the kickoff rule and how that could impact the roster and, the quarterback situation in terms of how many quarterbacks were injured over the past 2 years. And what used to be, oh, let's get cute and keep two. Now you're like, man, do we really want to get cute? And what if one guy goes down? Do we have the wherewithal to bring another guy? Do we feel good about the practice squad? And so just continuing to talk about like team building and practice squad candidates and practice squad guys that can be elevated. When you look at the game, particularly the first game, there's so many different guys that you're going to talk about.
Yeah. The board is ridiculous. Trying to keep up with it on the board is ridiculous. Oh man, just scrolling. That guy. Yeah.
Like being able to talk about it and different philosophies and all that other stuff. But it's a great time because it takes us one step closer to the regular season.
I've got a handful of things that are going on in training camps right now that I want to bounce off you. I'm not gonna lead the witness, so I'll hit you up with the little report. Give me your thoughts, and I'll piggyback here. Bryce Young's not going to play in the first preseason game.
I don't think it's a big deal because I think it depends on if your offensive line is playing. If your first offensive line is playing, I'm not going to subject Bryce Young to get beat up with the backups in. But I would like to see him get some game action, and a lot of it depends on, do they have joint practices? If they have joint practices, then I'm good. Don't worry about the game part. But if they don't, then at some point we do want to get him in the game, live bullets, allow him to get kind of used to the speed and that stuff.
I think confidence is going to be a big part of his success if he's going to have it this year, Buck. To me, last year we talked about he didn't play great. Mechanically, he fell off a little bit, and then we called it out. I mean, look, what was in front of him and who he was throwing to and all the different voices in his ear, there was a lot of things working against Bryce. And I think all those things coming together hurt his confidence. As someone who had been on I believe was a national champion in high school, obviously a ton of success there at Alabama, all those things, Heisman Trophy. So to have that last year, all that adversity, I think the confidence for him is huge. So If you don't feel like this is the group in front of him right now and you're ready to get him out there to give him confidence, if you think there's any risk involved there of, man, this might not go well, we're not quite ready yet, we still got to iron some things out, we're missing some pieces. To me, I think that's one of the most important things. They need to get to week one healthy, and they need to get to week one with their quarterback having confidence and belief in himself.
DJ, it's funny that you talk about that, right? Because I think there's this fine line between getting your guys ready to play and then having your best team possible available in week one. And I'm looking at all the injuries that are happening in training camp. I'm hearing the different coaches talk about their different philosophies and beliefs. You have Mike Tomlin talking about, hey, man, you can't get in a boxing match without sparring. But then you have the Rams and some other teams that are saying, yeah, I hear all that, but we want to make sure we get our guys there. Injuries inevitably happen. That's just kind of a part of training camp. But if you were running a team, which camp would you fall in knowing you've seen Kansas City Chiefs have hard training camps and start out fast? You've seen other guys kind of ease into the regular season. Where would you fall in that?
I think it depends on where your team is. I think when you're in the building phase, like Carolina Panthers are in like ground floor, trying to just get the foundation built. I think I can understand them maybe being a little more cautious. I think when you're chasing a championship, you want to be hardened and you don't want to waste games. I saw a thing the other day. The Chiefs they're already working against Lamar Jackson. They're already working against a scout team look with an athletic, guy back there playing quarterback so they can get ready for their opener. That's what are we, a month away from that thing? Like they're not letting, we've said it about them forever. They're not letting early games slip away. Like they know that can be the difference between home field advantage or not. Like they're going to come out to shoot ready to roll.
Yeah, no, I think it's an interesting approach. And I think it's one of the things that everyone, they kind of have to scrimmage back and forth in their minds, what's best for your team and depending on where you're at. And I also think depending on the type of team that you want to be. So you cannot be a team that talks about being a very physical team if you don't have physical practices. Now, you want to be smart in those things. You want to teach them how to practice, but you got to bang a little bit if your calling card is going to be like a physical team. If you're a finesse and it's all about speed or whatever, then you take a different approach. But, the way that it's going and the way the game will continue to evolve, where we talk about maybe taking away preseason games, I think a lot of guys are going to have to take a little bit of that collegiate approach, which is, hey, we're going to have an inner squad, but we still got to figure out a way to get our team ready to play without having to put some of our guys in harm's way.
Yeah, it's definitely different. I don't think it's one answer for all 32 teams. So something to keep an eye on there. We'll see. I would imagine we will see Bryce Young at some point in time in the preseason here. Let's get to a couple interesting rookie nuggets. The Patriots have announced Drake Maye will play. Buck, how many times have you seen practice reports go one way on a player, and then when you get to the preseason, it can go another way? And it works both ways, where I know Drake Maye, I feel like there's a lot of people that are kind of, I don't want to say itchy trigger fingers, but like there's anything that goes wrong there, it's like people are jumping on this and jumping on him. Now, we'll see how it all plays out. I'm curious to see, as we're recording this, nothing's happened with Brandon Aiyuk, but it sounds like the Patriots could be in on that, which still, I'm fascinated by that whole process with the Niners. I just can't believe that they would trade him, but shows that they recognize the need there to get better players around whoever their quarterback is. But Drake Maye is going to play in the preseason, Buck. So your thoughts on that?
Well, I think Drake needs to play as much as possible. We talk about where different people are in their developmental process. Drake Maye enters the National Football League with 26 career starts. Every rep for him, preseason or regular season game, is a rep that's going to be impactful for his developmental process. I need to see him make mistakes. I need to see him work through things at NFL speed so he can eventually get comfortable doing that. If you're telling me it's somebody else who's played a bunch of snaps and those things, no. But for me, as much as I can put him in behind a solid offensive line, I want him to play. I want him to kind of experience it in real time so he can get better.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think he needs to play. I wish they had more around him, but I'll honestly, we'll see how early they put him in these games. Like I'm curious to see. I would imagine Jacoby Brissett doesn't need much preseason. I mean, he's been around this league a long time. He's seen everything. He knows everything. I don't know that really benefits him so much. So I would imagine you probably see him pretty early on in these preseason games. Just get him as much work as possible. I'm fine if they don't want to play him for the first 4, 8, 12 games. I know he hasn't played much, as you mentioned. He needs to play, but man, I would like to see them get a little bit better around him before they throw him in there. We saw that with Bryce Young last year.
We did, but I don't know what we can do. How are we going to get them better? We can't pull off any trades for preseason. We got to kind of
we'll see what this Aiyuk thing happens. Maybe they get the Aiyuk thing done. Go ahead.
How crazy is that, Brandon?
Does this make any sense to you at all?
No, it really doesn't on both ends. Like it really doesn't. And I understand every player wants to have money, wants to get their money, but DJ, at some point, don't we have to come to a deal? I mean, we got to reach a deal. And the fact that they've allowed him to hold in for as long, at some point, man, we either playing or not. Like you got to practice or whatever. And the money is the money. And I understand why Brandon Aiyuk may see himself in a certain way where he wants to get paid. But I mean, if you're him, you can't pay him like he's CeeDee Lamb or Justin Jefferson or whatever. Like I think the DJ Moore deal kind of puts him where he is. I think it has to be between the Devontae Smith deal and the DJ Moore deal based on who he is. Is he wide receiver 1 for San Francisco? And I know it's different because of Deebo Samuel, but this is such a weird thing. Like
you are this close to winning a championship, this close. I think I don't know. It's easy to say from afar. And John Lynch has done a phenomenal job there. Kyle Shanahan, excellent job. But from afar, it seems like this, if there's a time to play hardball, this is the time to play hardball and say, hey, man, after this year, we can go our separate ways. That'll be it. And we'll do something. But right now, we are chasing a championship. You're a big piece of that. We hope Ricky Pearsall is going to be a great player. We don't know anything about Ricky Pearsall, how he's going to be. I know there's talk that it would be a veteran coming back because you need something to come back and help you this year. Because if you're just going to trade him for a draft pick, well, then I'm going to use him up this year and then trade him for a draft pick. Like the draft is not happening between now and the end of the season. So if I'm just getting a draft pick, why would I do that now?
Well, that's the other thing too. Like if you're the Niners, you don't have any reason to really cave. He's on a deal where he has to play on the 5th-year option at $15 million. Like he doesn't have anything that he can do to change that. I mean, I guess he can have like one of those mythical injuries or whatever, but if he wants to collect the $15 million, he has to play. And if you're the Niners, let's be honest, like the pecking order is Trent Williams, then Brandon Aiyuk. And Brandon Aiyuk is a great player. But I'm just saying, when we're building the team, I got Deebo Samuel, I got George Kittle, I got Christian McCaffrey. When we look at the pecking order of their personnel, he's not one of the top 5 players that you would pay. And so they can play without him. Trent Williams is the one that they need to get done. And then Brandon Aiyuk can get his money if it's coming down to I got to pick either or. If it's either or, I'm going to take Williams over Aiyuk.
Yeah, no, it's an interesting situation they find themselves in. Let's take a quick break. We come back. I'll hit a couple more of these thoughts here, what's going on in training camps, and get some reaction right after this. All right, but a couple more here. Bo Nix listed in the initial depth chart as the 3rd-string quarterback. Not a surprise that Stidham's the 1. Zach Wilson, though, being the 2. Our buddy Chase Daniel, our colleague Chase Daniel, he posted this is kind of vintage Sean Payton. He's going to make the rookie quote unquote kind of earn it. He's going to start at 3. Doesn't this feel like, he might be the 3rd quarterback on the depth chart, but he's not the 3rd quarterback.
Yeah. Cause when we're game planning and getting ready for the week 1, we already have our Bo Nix call sheet that we're working on. You know what I mean? Like what plays does Bo Nix like let's go ahead and start slotting some of these things in on the Excel spreadsheet so we can figure out which ones we want to highlight, which ones we want to delete, all of those things. I understand it. And I understand why you want to do those things, because you want to be able to stand in front of the room and say that this was a fair competition and Bo Nix won the job. What you would like to avoid is the perception that he was handed the job without clearly outplaying the other 2. So let him go in against the 3s, have some success. Then next week, flip the depth chart where he's now number 2. That is the game. Whatever he shows out in that game, then you flip it where he's number 1 in week 3, and he may or may not play in that 3rd preseason game.
Yeah, I mean, there's 2 different thoughts, right? You've got, hey, Caleb Williams is our starter. We're rolling with him right from the jump, going to maximize all the reps that you can get. And then there is kind of that, hey, for the locker room purposes, Nothing's given here. Everybody, doesn't matter who you are, what position you fight, you got to earn your position. And that's the approach there that Sean Payton has taken. So, yeah, I think it's inevitable. I think that he ends up climbing up, and I do think and this is coming from two guys who haven't been to Broncos camp, but it just feels like this is all set up for him to just kind of each week climb the ladder and then name him the starter, and then off you go. I also think, though, that they are going to depend a little bit more on the run game too, no matter who the quarterback is. That's kind of what Sean Payton wants to do here.
Well, I think that's a big part of it, because you don't want to throw, and we saw this with CJ Stroud. You remember the first couple of weeks with the Texans?
It took about 4 or 5 weeks to get it right.
They threw a bunch of balls, and then they dialed it back, and then it was actually better. Less is more for CJ Stroud, because the fewer opportunities that he had in the passing game, he actually became more efficient, more effective. And then as the season went on, they put more on his plate. For Bo Nix, not necessarily saying that he's destined to be a game manager the entirety of his career, but early on as a young quarterback, make it simple, rely on other parts of the team. Hopefully the running game and the defense to keep it close, so you can slowly add to his plate as the season goes along.
Yeah, no, I think that's going to be the game plan there for the Denver Broncos. A couple more here, Buck. Training camp fights. I mean, I guess it's fun to watch on social media, because it's just kind of funny to watch guys fight, I guess. People say, we got a tough team, we're a fighting team. I'll be honest, some of the toughest, most physical teams that I've been around some really, really tough physical teams. Weren't a lot of fights, man. I think that's what's kind of funny.
No, so I've been on teams where, look, that wasn't a part of the thing, that you can never get into a fight. You know what I'm saying? Like, it was like, hey, guys, we're wasting practice time.
This isn't get off our lawn either. Like, this is not, I'm not even stating what I think is right or what you think is right. I'm just stating the facts of, like, some of the most physical teams we've both been around. There weren't a lot of fights.
No. Like, now here's the thing: when you have joint practices, particularly because I'm sure we're talking about the Giants and the Detroit Lions, and
there's been fights all over the place. Yeah, not just there.
Fights or whatever. And you're also in the dog days of camp, where you're just kind of tired of seeing people. You're just kind of ready to get to it and do it. I would say when you have the Detroit Lions and the New York Giants, like, you have a team that has something to prove, right? You have the Giants, who are tired of being kind of the doormat because they didn't have a good year. The Lions have kind of flexed their muscles on teams. They kind of beat people up on their way to becoming a title contender. And so I'm sure in the Giants locker room and in meeting rooms, this was a measuring stick contest. This is a practice. We're going to show them. We're going to make sure that they're not going to push us around. And so everyone already comes to the practice on edge, and all it takes is one little thing to spark it. I'm sure that is what happened in that. But a lot of times, man, you don't want anyone to get hurt in a silly fight. You don't want to break a hand. You don't want anything silly like that. So I understand protecting your player, but at the end of the day, you want to get good work, and you want to get off the field with no one getting hurt.
Yeah. The Giants one, I guess there's been a couple of them there with the Giants and the Lions. I did see the one this morning, which was Nabers and Kirby Joseph, I guess, throwing some haymakers and some blows, by the way. I do feel like, again, I speak out of both sides of my mouth, I guess, here, but everything you've heard about Nabers coming out of there is that he's had a great camp, and that there is an edge to him. Now, I'd prefer he not use his hands, which we're relying on to secure our employment. If I'm Joe Shane and I'm Brian Daboll, I'd prefer him not to use those hands to punch helmets. But it does sound like he's had a really good camp. He's made a bunch of big plays, and in some ways given them a little bit of an edge offensively.
Well, yeah, he's a guy who plays with an edge. When you talk to the people down at LSU, they talked about him being a very feisty dog, a very intense competitor. And, for a team like that, the Giants kind of need some of that on offense, because I don't know who their guy was. I don't know who was the party starter for them. Without Saquon, I don't know who the offensive player that kind of sets the tone and kind of gets it going. Ideally, you don't necessarily like a wide receiver to do it. You want someone maybe from one of those interior positions to kind of get it done, but they need his competitiveness. They need some of that animal. I thought what was also interesting is that, swag. I think that's what his coach told him. Daniel Jones jumped in and kind of got a little bit, got into it. Now, I don't want my franchise quarterback, but I do think that can be endearing for the quarterback to mix it up a little bit, as long as he doesn't get in the way. Like, I want you to kind of get into it, but get out. Get out before the scrum happens. Let's get out.
No, and I just think every time I hear like somebody from Duke got in a fight, all I can think of is, was he slapping the floor? Like, was he in a defensive stance and slap the floor, hands up?
How about that? How about that as a trademark? Like, that used to annoy me to no
Oh,
end.
it's the worst.
Like to no end. When I was in college, my roommate, Cliff Baskerville, is from Jersey, so he was the biggest Bobby Hurley fan. And I used to tell him he's a traitor, but he used to love, they slapped the floor. He was all in on Jersey Bobby Hurley. And then I was like, he's so annoying. And because Duke was so good at that time, every announcer, look at Duke, the intensity. So annoying.
Slapping the floor. So do they do that anymore? I don't think I've seen that anymore. I think that might be gone.
No, they don't do that anymore. They don't play defense like that anymore either. Sorry, that wasn't a shot. I'm just saying they don't play defense like that anymore. They're not intense like that anymore.
Yeah, you can take Bucky out of Carolina, but you can't take Carolina out of Bucky. Last little nugget here from training camp we'll hit for today. Jalen Hurts, no interceptions. They've been charting all this stuff, which sometimes I think is kind of silly that they do this. But it is, I mean, that's a long time, and we're deep into training camp for him not to turn the ball over. I thought that was something, somewhat interesting.
Well, I mean, it's good that he hasn't turned the ball over. I am really curious about this transition because this offense is completely changing. Kellen Moore is running a traditional pro-style offense. To me, I've talked to you about, like, when Jalen Hurts was coming out, I compared him to Dak Prescott. To me, this is very interesting to see if Kellen Moore can work his magic like he worked with Dak Prescott, in terms of Dak Prescott really improved from the player that he was at Mississippi State to the player that he is now as a passer, night and day. Can Kellen Moore help Jalen Hurts make a similar transition? Once you pay Jalen Hurts the type of money that you paid him, DJ, you can't continue to run him like he ran those early years. He has to be able to transition into being more of a pocket playmaker who uses his legs occasionally, as opposed to the guy who is the athletic quarterback that is using his legs primarily. If he does that, if Kellen Moore helps him do that, the Eagles not only benefit this year, but they benefit in the future, because now they can continue to transition this offense to one that can be dynamic, but in a different fashion.
Who did we compare Jalen Hurts to coming out of college, Buck?
It was all Dak Prescott to me. I thought he was
like, I thought he was the whole time.
I thought he was a clone. And so if Kellen Moore is able to do it, and I think it's easier for Kellen Moore to do it because he's done it once with Dak Prescott. Yeah. I think he can show him Cowboys tape, and I think Jalen
look at the Cowboys, the success that he had against the Eagles too.
Right. I think he can envision. I can think he can envision himself doing some of the things that Dak Prescott has been able to do in that offense.
Yeah. No, I'm. That's one of those things. I don't think people have talked a lot about that with Kellen. With Kellen being there, I think a lot of people didn't even realize it. He was quick stop with the Chargers. He is back in the NFC East, a division that Kellen Moore had a lot of success with Dak Prescott in that Cowboy offense. So he knows everybody really, really well there. That's going to be fun to watch what that offense looks like. Add Saquon Barkley into the mix. It's going to be must-see TV. So looking forward to that. Again, no interceptions, no turnovers for Jalen Hurts. I think you get carried away with chart and stuff in practice, but I think that's notable. I think it's impressive. All right, Buck, that's going to do it for us today. Again, quick pods this week. We've got another one coming up this week, so be on the lookout for that. But that's going to do it. Hope you guys enjoyed it. We'll see you next time right here on Move the Sticks.